So each year we choose a theme. And so for 2023, we decided that we would do the theme building a community. It seemed to go really well with what we were doing as far as building a new building, which is what we're doing on South Russell or East Russell Road, our new center that's under construction right now. So we decided to look at what it would take to have a community. If we had a community, what kind of qualities would be present there? We talk about these qualities as aspects of the divine, ways that the divine shows up uniquely. And so things like love is a quality of the divine. Beauty is a quality of the divine. Peace is a quality of the divine. And so we had our Vision Corps, which is a group of people that come together to commune with Spirit and seek what is wanting to unfold for whatever project that we're working on. I had the Vision Corps come together and we visioned for our themes for 2023. So in January, we looked at freedom. Freedom is a necessary quality in building a community. Last month, we looked at creativity. And this month, our focus is on joy. And joy is one of those qualities that it often has many different synonyms and different aspects to it. There are things like you could think of joy as pleasure. You could think of joy as happiness, amusement, contentment, excitement, relief, wonder. There is the joy of celebrating somebody else's accomplishments. And then there's the joy that you get, it's often called Schadenfreude, which is a German term that means celebrating someone's unluckiness, someone's demise. And some people get joy from that too, when they celebrate somebody else's problems. So there are different ways of doing that. Gratitude can be a celebration of joy. And then there's the joy that comes from spiritual connection. When you are deeply connected with Spirit and those moments of bliss. One happened to me earlier this morning as I was praying in our service, and I was just overcome. And as I was starting to pray, I said, I'm tingling all over because there was so much joy in us coming together, back together again in person. And so I'm a scholar. I like to read. I read avidly. A couple years ago, I read a book written by Douglas Abrams, based on a week-long visit he had with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The two men had come together to celebrate the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday. And so they spent a week together in India. They tried to do it in South Africa, but South Africa wouldn't let the Dalai Lama have a visa to come in because they do too much trading with China. So it was a bit of a turmoil there, but they managed to get together in India to celebrate their relationship and the experience of joy that they have in each other's presence. You know, if you've ever seen the Dalai Lama speaking, you look at the man, and that man is joy. It's just written all over him. He is just like this squishy little schoolboy who is having so much fun he can't believe it, and it's such a contagious feeling of being around the Dalai Lama. So Desmond Tutu is rather a character. He likes to tease the Dalai Lama. And so throughout this whole time that they are together, they're cracking jokes like crazy. The Dalai Lama is being his genuine, open, schoolboy enthusiasm, and Desmond Tutu is making fun of him. And so throughout the entire book, it's interspersed in there. But the book is called The Book of Joy, because that's what happened when these two men came together. They experienced a week-long period of joy with in each other's presence. Desmond Tutu happened to be suffering from pancreatic cancer and died not too long after this experience. But can you imagine spending one of your last weeks on earth in the presence of the Dalai Lama talking about joy? I can't imagine anything better. I'd love to go out of my life the same way. So in the book, they talk about what are the obstacles to joy. And so some of the things that get in our way are the things that we create within our own selves. That's generally what stops us. So things like fear, stress, anxiety, those things can inhibit our experience of joy. Frustration and anger, usually directed towards somebody else, that inhibits our experience of joy. And we have sadness and grief that can inhibit how we feel grief in different situations. And then it goes even a little bit deeper where we feel despair and that profound loneliness. These kind of things can help us, can hinder us from experiencing the fullness of joy. We believe that joy is actually a quality of the divine, and it is something that is much more deeper than any kind of happiness could possibly be. We can experience joy in the midst of tragic situations, in the midst of the most painful things we have ever experienced in our lives. We can still experience that supreme joy. Think of it this way. Many of you can relate to this. Think of a mother having a child. Now, there's not much more pain in the world than goes on when a mother gives birth. I haven't done that. I've witnessed it. I've heard lots of secondhand accounts of it. That is some of the most profound pain. But the instant that baby comes into this world and you hear that first cry, there is no other joy like it. No other joy in the world exists like that of a mother hearing her newborn's first cry. Pain can be there, but in the midst of that pain, in the midst of that sorrow, there can be the most profound joy. I recently was in Tennessee with my father as he was passing. And he spent 7 days. It was 7 days after they took him off of life support before he made his transition, which is what we call moving on to the next incarnation. And I made a playlist of my father's favorite music. So I'm in Tennessee, right? So my father loved the Grand Ole Opry. And so I had 8 hours of Grand Ole Opry music and country gospel. And I would listen to it over and over and over again, just keeping it on play. Nurses would come in and out, and they're like, "Oh, I love the music. It is so wonderful." I happen to like oils, essential oils, and so the place was filled with the smells of the most exquisite essential oils and blends of oils that I could come up with. The nurses would come in. I got to come in here for a minute and just smell this place because it smells so good. Now you can imagine a hospital room where someone is dying doesn't usually smell good. This was really good. It was a very profound, very peaceful time for me, and I was filled with so much joy. My father lived a wonderful, expressive life, and I know that he has returned to the arms of my mother, and so there is nothing but joy to celebrate in this. Profound sadness, profound grief, and yet in the midst of it, this most amazing joy that could ever be experienced in life. This is how joy shows up in the divine. We have these things that stop us, but there's so much more that can bring that expression of joy through us if we just take time to be conscious in the moment and not spend all of our energy dwelling on the negative aspects of it, but look for the positive in there. I mean, I could have sat there and with my father and been crying the entire time, but I wasn't. I created an experience. I created an experience for him, for the rest of my family, and certainly for the nurses and the aides that came into the room. It was an experience of profound and deep joy. So in the book, the Book of Joy, Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama say that there are 8 pillars of joy. There are 8 things that are required for joy. And I want to spend some time this month going through those 8 pillars because I think they're very profound within themselves. And so the 8 pillars, they divided them into 4 qualities of the mind, 4 things that are more mental actions. And then there are 4 qualities of the heart. And so the 4 qualities of the mind are perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance. Those 4 qualities of the 4 pillars of joy that are qualities of the mind. The 4 qualities of the heart are forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. Can you feel the difference just listening to those words? The ones are more of a mental action, a thing about our thinking processes, and the other are more about actions that we do that come from our heart. And so today I want to take a look at the first 2 pillars of joy, perspective and humility. So perspective has to do with the way we look at things. You know, our founder, Ernest Holmes, has a very famous quote. It's actually pretty much synonymous with the science of mind movement. And his quote is, "Change your thinking, change your life." Dr. Wayne Dyer, in one of his books, wrote, "Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change." This is all about changing our perspective, how we view something. When we are in the midst of some kind of a turmoil, tragic, or problematic situation in our lives, it's really hard sometimes to step out of it and look at it from a different perspective. The Archbishop Desmond Tutu says that we need to look at it from a God's eye perspective. Now, if you can imagine, if you believed in the God that's set up in heaven, then God looking down on this perspective has this wide view of everything that's going on around it. He's not in the situation looking out at it, but looking down on it this way. And so this God's eye perspective allows us to see things that we might not actually even recognize when it's happening in the moment, because we're so caught up in the situation that's going on there. Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, wrote that our perspective towards life is our final and ultimate freedom. How we choose to look at the events that we experience in our lives determine how free we are from those experiences, or conversely, how much bondage we feel in the situation. By how we look at it, our perspective of it. Now, perspective is not a denial of pain or suffering, but it's a shift on it. It's shifting it from what's happening to me to maybe what's happening for me. I'm in this situation, this traumatic situation, and I could think of it like a victim and say, oh, this is being done to me. But if I shift my perspective and I say, what's in it for me? What is here for me to learn? What is here for me to know? What is here for me to experience and grow from? That changes the outlook and the way that I experience whatever that situation is. You know, we need to find a wider and larger perspective on every situation in our lives. We step back out of it within our own mind. We step back out of it and look for the bigger picture here. Like, what's really happening? I can continue to be caught up in the events, or I can take that moment, that pause, and step back and see what's going on. This is about moving away from our own limited self-awareness or our own limited self-interest and looking at it from a brighter angle. You can imagine it this way. If we had this situation here, we can begin to look at it from 6 different directions. We can look at it like a square from each side and see what kind of perspective we can get. If I step out of it and look at it this way, what is it going to happen? I like some of the Native American traditions, spiritual traditions that are out there. And one of them has to do with the directions. And so for me, this idea of perspective is, I look at it from the east. And in Native American traditions, east is the sunrise. So how did this problem begin? So I look at it from that perspective. How did it begin? The south is the time of growth. So what caused this situation to get so problematic for me? The west is the time of harvest, time of looking at it. What am I to learn from this situation? And the time of the north is that time that we rest in it. And we allow it to be what it is, that form of acceptance. We can look at it from below and see what is actually here. What is the foundation of this problem? And we can turn it around and look at it from the God's eye perspective and look down on the situation and see all of the components of it. But changing how we look at it by moving into a different point of view, we can have a different experience of that situation. So the second step of the pillar of joy is humility. Humility comes from perspective. Because humility is about realizing that it's not just me here. Humility is that idea of there's something bigger working here in me. There's something bigger in this situation than what I can see from my limited perspective. But if I'm still stuck in that thing, I can't get to a place where I can even see it. So when we have a wider perspective, we have a more natural understanding of our place in the world. And this humility, this naturally leads to the recognition that as human beings, we can't always solve things from the place of human beings. Sometimes we have to step out of it. Sometimes we have to seek guidance from something else. I follow the writings of Joel Goldsmith. He's a phenomenal mystic, contemporary of Ernest Holmes, our founder. And in one of his books, The Heart of Mysticism, he says this. He says, this is his prayer. When he's stuck in any kind of situation, this is his prayer to God. He says, search my mind, search my body, search my consciousness. And if you find anything there that doesn't belong, take care of it. I don't even need to know what it is. Sometimes we have to step out of it because we can't solve it. We're too enmeshed in the situation to solve it. And so we have to be humble enough, have enough humility to turn it over to a power that is outside of the situation. It's not outside of us, but it's outside of this situation. It is not enmeshed in the situation. And so we allow this power, this presence, to begin to help aid us in solving the problem. You know, we are not created for independence, but we are created for interdependence. We are not here to be self-sufficient. We are here to support each other mutually. And sometimes that's what we need. Sometimes we're just too stuck in the situation to find an answer to it. I have a group of friends that when I'm in a problem, I don't even have to tell them what it is. I just text them. We have a group text. And I just text them and I say, no truth. That's it. Just no truth. I'm not getting into the situation. I'm not telling them about it. I don't want them to get caught up in the problem. I want them to know that God is active in my life right now. Because right now I'm kind of stuck in the thing and I'm not seeing it for myself. And so I just simply approach it that way. Just no truth for me. And they respond, I'm on it. And I know that something's happened. A friend and colleague of mine, Reverend Colleen Tanaka, says it this way. If I take one step towards God, God takes 1,000 steps towards me. Sometimes I just have to ask for the help. Sometimes I just have to be humble enough to say, I can't fix this. You know, in the Bible, it would be written like, I of my own self can do nothing. It is the Father within that doeth the works. Sometimes we have to be humble enough to do that. In the book, they talk about this in a really cool analogy that I loved. You know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is from Tibet. Himalayas, highest mountains in the world. And he asked this question of his students. He says, when spring comes, where does the growth begin? The growth begins in the low places. The growth does not begin high on the mountaintop. The growth begins where we are. And so when we're stuck in a situation and we have the opportunity to change our perspective and to reach out in humility for assistance, that's where our growth happens. We're in the low place, and that's where growth is going to happen first. If we waited till we were up in the high spot, we wouldn't probably notice the growth up there. But it's those steps along the way as it moves up the mountaintop, as spring blooms in the valleys and then rises higher and higher in the mountains. So do we. We bloom where we're at. We grow from our challenges. And when we take our challenges and look at them from a different way and be a little humble about it, then we can begin to experience things in our lives differently. So here at Serenus for Spiritual Living, we like to talk about two different things. We talk about our principles and we talk about our practices. Now, I've just spent the last few minutes talking about principle. But principle is no good unless we put it into practice. One of my favorite authors is Michael Beckwith. And he writes, rudimentary spirituality is theory. Advanced spirituality is practice. That which you practice transforms your life. So I'm going to give us an opportunity now to practice this a little bit. Practice this idea of changing our perspective, of self-distancing. You know, meditation practices that we engage in shift our perspective from our reactive, emotional brain, the brain that's caught up in the situation, to our more reflective, our more humble place in our consciousness. We can't do it as long as our busy, chattering mind is going like crazy. We have to step back. We have to give it a little space. We have to change our perspective. and ask for help. So, if you would, take a moment and just get yourself comfortable in your chair. If it's okay for you, close your eyes. Nobody's going to come around and touch you or anything. You're all going to be safe. Just close your eyes and relax for a moment. And I want you to bring to mind some kind of a challenge or situation or problem that might be happening in your life right now. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a simple thing. Just begin to bring something to mind that is on your mind right now, worrying you right now. Okay, now in your mind, I want you to describe this problem as if you were talking to someone else, about someone else. Don't use words like I, mine, or me. Use your name as if you were talking to someone else about this person that you are. And describe this situation in your mind. Now let's begin to shift the perspective. Think about this problem as it would be in your life 1 week from now. Now, how is it going to be in your life 1 month from now? How are you going to be experiencing this problem 1 year from now? Do you think this issue will still have an impact on you? Do you think you'll even remember it? And now imagine that you're looking at this problem from a universal presence perspective of the God's eye. Looking down on this person that you are who is involved in the situation. What do you see around you? What do you see happening? See all of your fears, all of your frustrations, all of your worry from that distance. Notice the other people that are involved in this situation, if there are any. And remember that just like you, they are worthy of love and respect. And then ask yourself, what will serve me and the world in this moment from this situation? If you would, just take in a nice cleansing breath, let it in and out. This is a simple thing that you can do at any moment. When you're caught up in a situation, take that pause. Just close your eyes and pull yourself out of the situation and look at it from that higher perspective and see what is there for you. Now, you may have to do this many times when you're encountering a situation. Depends on what it is. There are times when it's like, every 5 minutes I'm doing this. But if you stop and pause, it's going to help you experience it a little differently. Stop and reflect on what's happening here for you. Not so much what's happening to you, but what is here for me to learn, what is here for me to grow from, what is here for me to share with others. Each one of us is here to bring a unique and special perspective to every problem that we encounter in the world. So I'd like to finish off with a wonderful quote from our founder, Ernest Holmes, that I think of as our principle for the month. I usually start my talks with this, but it felt like it needed to be at the finish today. This is from his book, Ideas of Power. There is a laughter of God. Let's laugh it. There is a song of the universe. Let's sing it. There is a hymn of praise. Let us praise it. There is a joy, a beauty. There is a deep, abiding peace. Let's experience it now. All right, so we're going to go into one of our other spiritual practices, which is a prayer. We pray a little bit differently here at Centers for Spiritual Living. We pray what we call affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment. And so I'm going to invite the practitioners to stand up and surround the sanctuary. We haven't been able to do this for a long time, and so we're kind of excited about that. So these are our licensed spiritual practitioners, people who, as I said, spend a minimum of 4 years in study, learning these principles, integrating these practices into their lives, and allowing that truth to live from them. And so as I pray, they're going to hold you in consciousness. So if you would with me, turn within. Just taking a nice deep breath. Our prayer is in 5 stages. In the first stage, I will recognize the presence of the divine. In the second one, I will unify myself with it. Because if God is all this, then I am too. And I will unify you with it as well. In the third stage, we call recognition. This is where I speak spiritual truth. And after I've identified spirit, unified with it, spoken truth, the only thing left to do is to give thanks and then let it go. And so those are our 5 steps. So if you would with me, turn within. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one. One power, one presence, one divine creative source of all. That one is in, through, and as everything. It is the very life that is breathing itself through each one of us. It is who we are here and now. Nothing exists outside of the one. It is that love, that peace, that joy, and that beauty that is life expressing itself over and over again. And because I know that there is only this one, I know that I am one with it. I know that that creative love intelligence has brought itself forth and manifested itself as me in all that I am and all that I do. And as I know this is true for me, I know this is true for each one of us. That each one of us is that unique and perfect representation of the divine right here, right now, on this earth, in this plane, in this time. I know that each one of us is that manifestation of love and beauty and peace and joy. It is the truth of who we are. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that right here and right now, each and every one of us is a conduit for the flow of divine joy to manifest itself in the world. I know that each one of us is that place in consciousness where spirit shows up beautifully and perfectly and easily, just the way that it's supposed to. I know that each one of us is a life that is unfolding, and it is unfolding through this presence of joy, this perfection and this wholeness. And how grateful I am to know this. How grateful I am to feel this power, to feel this presence, to see it operating in the lives before me. And I simply release this word into that creative mind that always says yes, that knows no lack or limitation. And I let it go and I let it be. And if you would, affirm this with me by saying, and so it is. Amen.